Turn up the dive, feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember right. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, the secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, monsters, and welcome to this week's episode of Monsters on the Edge on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, as always, Barnaby Jones. Today's episode is pre-recorded, as happens sometimes with people's lives. They cannot make it for live shows, and today is one of those events. So today, just so you know, for all of you people putting in questions and comments, today is going to be a pre-recorded show. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this weekend coming up, the Caps team is going to be in Brainerd, Minnesota at the Psychic and Wellness Fair. We're actually going to be in Baxter, Minnesota at the Brainerd Wellness Fair. It is the 12th through the 14th, and you can get all your information there at metaparapro.com. Then coming up, guys, in May, we are going to be at the Rhinelander Hodag Heritage Festival. We may still have tickets available. We are going on a Bigfoot hike and informational experience that evening after the event at 7 p.m. right there in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. We'll share some stories and show you what to look for and stuff, and you guys can get tickets for that on our website at wisconsincaps.com. And then, of course, guys, Marinette Menominee Bigfoot and Paranormal Convention is coming up June 1st in Marinette, Wisconsin. Myself, Doug Hychek, Rich Daniels, and Chad Lewis will be speaking at this event. And Rich Daniels and myself on May 31st will be leading a Bigfoot hike onto the Hayden Adventure property just outside of Menominee, Michigan. So if you have not got your tickets for that, they are available online. You can get virtual tickets for just $5 and watch it from wherever you are, or you can come and attend in person. Advance tickets are discounted on the website, or they're $20 at the door. All right, guys. And if you guys want to show your support for all things here at the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys. Today's guest is Ryan Edwards. He is an acclaimed cryptozoologist and author. He was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. As a child, he was a fan of the natural world, paleontology, and mysteries. These led him straight into the arms of cryptozoology. At a young age, Ryan fell in love with cryptozoology because it demonstrates that there are still mysteries out there in the natural world. He has spent over 10 years researching the menagerie of unrecognized species across the world. At the age of 20, Ryan was able to get his first book published, Cryptids of the World. The book brings a scientific perspective into the field that can lack such an important viewpoint. Now, Ryan spends all of his time traveling around Texas and America's South, lecturing and educating others on the science. Ryan's goal is not to force others to believe in these creatures, but to educate them and for them to come to their own conclusions. In the world of cryptozoology, there has to be a marriage between both science and superstition and a mix of logical and the illogical. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Ryan Edwards. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So whenever we do a pre-recorded show, I want to make sure that we get it right out in the beginning. Can you tell everybody where they can find you? What are your websites? How to best reach you?
Of course, I'm available on social medias like most people nowadays. You can always find me on Facebook. If you look up Ryan Edwards, I'll hopefully be one of the people that show up first. If you look at Ryan Edwards also on my Instagram page, I will pop up there. If you're interested in trying to reach out for my books, anything like that, you can look me up on Amazon. You can look up Cryptids of the World by Ryan Edwards or Sasquatch: A Prehistory of a Living Legend by Ryan Edwards. That's also available on Light. That is David Weatherly's company, because that is the ones that published me. Soon enough, they're on their website. That will be available from there for purchase. If you want to reach out to me, you're always welcome to do so. On my things, on my social medias, I have my contact information, my phone number, of course, my email. My email is Ryan Edwards, no spaces, .crypto@gmail.com. You can always reach out to me, email me from there, questions, concerns, anything like that, or if you just want to learn something. I'm always open to discussion and always open to talk.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. I like to get that out there because, like I said, pre-recorded, we can't ask questions live for all the people watching, so there's a great way to get a hold of you right off the bat. And so awesome. It is so cool to have you here. Thank you very much for coming on. So you have a new book out. I want to start there, and we can go from there. So here is your new book. Why don't you tell us all about it? Sasquatch, A Prehistory of a Living Legend.
Of course, this is actually a book I've been working on for quite a while now. I just got published on February 19th of 2024, so it is very new. It is written by me. The foreword is written by my good friend Ken Gerhard, and the artwork is done by Jason McLean, another cryptozoologist from here in Texas. It's a Sasquatch book, but from a different perspective. It's most Bigfoot books. The goal of the book is to prove Sasquatch exists. That's the goal of it. Mine, it's not to prove it exists. It's as if we know the species already exists. Now, what's the next step? What is this creature? What's its origins? What's its ecology, morphology, behavioral sense? In the beginning of the book, I talk about the speculative ecology, morphology, and behavior sense of Bigfoot, looking at 50 to 60 years of research and Native American stories of these creatures and other Bigfoot-like creatures seen around the world. I speculate on their morphology using footprint casts, researchers like Grover Krantz, Jeff Meldrum, Mark Hall, all these big time researchers looking at their research and looking at my own research as well. I speculate on the origins of this creature. For instance, there are many people that believe it's a human species, there's people that believe it's an ape species. I have the camp that it's very much an unknown ape species. Not necessarily that I'm right or wrong. With cryptozoology, it's very much a Schrodinger's cat. These creatures are unknown, so we can never say, is it this or is it that? So until these creatures are proven, they're a little bit of everything, I like to say. It's just my own hypothesis and my own theory. Because with it, I view cryptozoology as a science. It has ology in the name for a reason. Is that we use scientific data to prove these species exist. And I try to use biology and zoology as my basis. I have a little bit of a history in zoology and biology. I've been doing research in that for 10 years now. I am only 22. Let me put that out there right now. I'm a young guy, but still, I don't think my age counteracts me at all. I've been doing research in this ever since I was a kid. And I try to come at it as logically as I can because once you get into the more fantastical side of cryptozoology, it loses the science. It loses the real meat and potatoes of it. It becomes stories. It becomes fantastical. I don't think cryptozoology should be that. This is a science, and we should look at the data, the true proven science behind it. That's why with Sasquatch, a prehistory of a living legend, I speculate a lot. I say these are hypotheses. These are not proven. These are my own educated guesses. That doesn't necessarily mean they are true, but it's kind of a different perspective. Because with me, I've always seen Sasquatch as yes, it has a lot of biological precedents, but there's one big thing with Sasquatch that to me doesn't make sense. Is the size of it, is the body proportions, the behavior sense. It's almost like it's built for a different age. And if we look at prehistory of North America, it kind of was. I believe Bigfoot is what we call a evolutionary anachronism. It was built for a different age. For instance, the pronghorn, indigenous to North America. It evolved alongside a North American cheetah, Myroconyx. Both these animals could reach about 40 miles per hour. So the pronghorn evolved alongside an animal that predated it, and now that predator died out. So it's evolved for a different age. I believe the same thing happened to Sasquatch. But thanks to its high intelligence of being a large simian and its adaptability, it's been able to survive into the modern day. I also discuss possible origins. Of course, any Bigfoot book's got to bring up Gigantopithecus. Me, I bring it up, but I'm not a big precedent for that. What I don't think it is Giganto. I also bring up Paranthropus. That's also another candidate that's come up in recent years. And one other candidate, which is personally my favorite, Dryopithecus. Dryopithecines were a group of prehistoric ape found in Miocene Europe. Dryopithecus literally means oak ape. When you say ape, most people think of chimpanzees or orangutans brachiating through jungles and things like that. Dryopithecus was found in oak forests and swamps, something very ecologically similar to Florida or the Pacific Northwest. So I put forward the theory that these apes found a way to North America, evolved, kind of convergently evolved to be very human-like, but are not human, and are now what we now see as Sasquatch. So that's kind of the basis of this book. I go into more detail. I bring up things like infrasound, foot morphology. One thing I go really deep into is hand morphology and how the hand morphology of Sasquatch indicates that it's more of an ape species than a human species. And it's just kind of very kind of scientific viewpoint of Sasquatch. Something like I'm no Jeff Meldrum, I'm no King Gerhard, but I try to bring as much logic and science to this field as I can.
Very cool. Very cool. So, do you think you kind of touched on a little bit here? Do you think that these are part of the former like megafauna?
Of course, like if you look at prehistoric North America, you had the American lion. Imagine a lion but the size of Aslan from Narnia. You had the short-faced bear, a bear species that when it stood on its hind legs, it was 13 feet tall. So I believe this animal convergently evolved alongside these species to not necessarily compete with them, but to survive with them. Like, for instance, if you're a Sasquatch and you see a short-faced bear stand on its legs and it's 2 times your size, that can also indicate their intelligence. I would run off too. Like, look at how many times with Sasquatch sightings that they don't attack people, they run off. So maybe that behavioral set comes from their prehistoric origins, because that's one thing that some people don't really, I don't know if they get a grasp of, is that every animal around us has a natural history. Even Homo sapiens have a natural history. And with cryptids, if they are true living, breeding species, they also have a natural history, a unnatural history, you might say. So that's what I kind of speculate on with Bigfoot and Sasquatch. Like, it is a living, breeding species, and now where did it come from? Why does it have the morphological features it has? Why does it have the behavioral sense? Its ecology. How does the ecology affect this creature? How does it affect the environment around it? And how is it built for a different age, Pleistocene or Pliocene North America? And how did that environment shape Sasquatch? For instance, if you talk to paleontologists and zoologists, Pliocene and Pliocene North America, if you would have traveled back in time to then, you probably would have thought you were in Africa. Large savannas with large gomphotheres and mastodons and plenty of like calicotheres, horses, things like that. You would have thought you were on an African safari, not Yellowstone. So if we look at Africa as a perspective, what also evolved to become a bipedal ape in Africa at the time? Homo sapiens. So what if a extant species of ape that also lived in North America and convergently evolved in a very similar environment to our own lineage and became what we now know as Sasquatch? It didn't evolve to become human because it found a niche that it lives in and that it's comfortable in. And people believe, like, okay, what's a niche and what's all this? I'm like, well, think about this. It's the end of the day. You're in your bed. You're comfortable. You're nice. You have a cover on you. You're comfortable. You're not going to move from that position, right? Unless you get hungry or something, then you might get up and get food. That's what we call evolution in biology. You found a niche, and you don't have to change that. So I believe Sasquatch found that niche, and it didn't necessarily have to evolve out of it. So with this book, I kind of speculate on, like, also I talk about North America at the time, like what predators and prey species would have convergently evolved alongside this creature to become what we now know as Sasquatch.
So, in your opinion, then, why do you think that, some, like, on the cover of your book here, you have, is this a woolly mammoth or a mastodon right there, and then a saber-toothed tiger?
Yes, saber-tooth, Smilodon fatalis and mammothus. It's supposed to be a Colombian mammoth, but you can say it's a woolly mammoth as well, because proboscideans, elephants, were very common in North America at the time.
Okay. So when you're talking about these creatures evolving and finding their niche and stuff, why do you think then that the other creatures, the other megafauna and animals of North America went extinct, and why do you think that the Sasquatch is still here today?
Well, that is a pretty good question, because also look at primates in general. Primates are very adaptable. We are very likely to survive, especially what we call frugivorous species. Primates that eat fruit, they're more likely to survive because it's been shown they kind of cultivate their next generation. They eat the fruit, and the seeds go through their intestinal tracts, through they have it excreted from their bodies, and then those seeds grow to be the next generation of fruit. So it's almost like they're kind of quote unquote cultivating their next generation of food. And also high intelligence, like I speculate on the intelligence of Sasquatch. Looking at the head structure, speculating on like the brain capacity. This brain is most likely larger than a human brain. Necessarily, brain size does not necessarily convergently mean high intelligence, of course, but with most primates, it does. So I believe these creatures are on a par with human intelligence, but their intelligence is in a totally different area. We have mathematics, science, and religion. They have being able to hide away from humans and live on the land. So it's like on par, but 2 different areas entirely. So I believe the high adaptability and also just Their ability to be highly intelligent let them survive while the other species died out. And then we have to speculate on the extinction. The late Pleistocene extinction, there's many theories. There's the overhunting theory that humans overhunted species. The theory that climate change affected it. Me personally, I have a perspective that it was multiple factors, not just one. Like most extinctions, it's more than one factor. Like for instance, Paleo Indians, early North American Homo sapiens when they entered North America, that also could have caused Sasquatch to become a lot more secretive. Because imagine you're a Sasquatch living in North America, not exactly top of the food chain, but you're one of the top omnivores. Then you see something that looks like you, but that has fire and has no hair on it, and it throws spears and it kills animals. You might want to run away from that, probably. So that might have caused the animals to become even more secretive that we see now. Like even a lot of Native American stories, like from tribes in the Pacific Northwest, they reference a time that when Sasquatch lived alongside humans, and then because of humans' greed or whatever, moved away from the humans. So that might even be referencing something that happened in prehistory, not necessarily word for word, but every legend has a basis in some type of fact.
Very interesting. Wow. So, that's absolutely fascinating. You got me stumped
A
here now.
lot of information at once, I know.
It is, man. That's awesome. I mean, you're definitely a wealth of knowledge. You have a lot of information on the prehistory and stuff here. I love this. So I have a question then that's come to mind on several occasions here, and when you talk about looking at these creatures and trying to determine what they are and everything, a lot of people are bothered by the fact that with Gigantopithecus, we have this species that we have, scientifically recognized. We have this whole like body structure and lifestyle and everything all figured out from it. And there's only a tooth and like a jaw, like a fragment of the jaw that's ever been found of this creature. And it bothers me that, we have a tooth for lack of anything else, and you've created this entire creature out of this tooth. And yet we're still not able to say that these creatures exist and there isn't a proof of them and there's not scientific recognition. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, like that kind of also goes hand in hand with so many people ask, why don't we have a body? Why don't we have fossil records? Why don't we have fossil evidence? Well, ask any good primatologist worth their weight in salt, and they will tell you we probably only know 10 to 16% of the known primate fossil record, including human lineage. There's a story that goes with paleoanthropologists. You can fit all the bones that prove human evolution in a shoebox. And that's kind of true because what we do is we fit fragments together and like, okay, like you look at any like picture of like Lucy or Australopithecine or Neanderthal. Those are small little parts put together, sometimes from different individuals at times. And so like the lack of fossil evidence, of course we have a lack of fossil evidence. Like there are many times of what we call a ghost lineage. An animal just kind of pops up and we have a fossil record beforehand. Like it wasn't until 2006 that we had any fossil record for chimpanzees, because first of all, they live in environments that do not consist with fossils, and second, they are very uncommon because most primates, when they go off to die, they go off and hide somewhere to die. The only reason we found giganto teeth is first Rolf von Koningswald wasn't even looking for them; he was looking for dragon's teeth. And when he found them, they probably got washed into the caves, and some people believe pulled in the caves, and that's why we found Giganto in the first place. Many human species, even human species like Homo denisova, the Denisovans, they were only discovered by one single finger bone. And thanks to DNA evidence, we proved, okay, that's a human species, but it's not Homo sapiens, not Homo neanderthalensis. It's something totally different. So the lack of like physical evidence is actually makes sense for a large intelligent primate, especially in the environments that it's living in, because we know for sure primates did live in North America a long time ago during the Eocene, about 30 to 40 million years ago. But these were what were called like proto primates, something like even less evolved than a lemur. But it's very funny because if you look at our own North American primates, the latest one, I believe the name's hard. It's hard to say, but it means little cat men and Sioux. From that primate to the one that came before it is about 10 million years of rock. So this thing kind of came out of nowhere. So we kind of expect that with primates. So if we were to discover Sasquatch, I believe it'd be the same way as a ghost lineage. We have no reference to where it came from because who goes looking for primate fossils in North America? Everyone says they don't exist here, so we don't look for it. It's like if someone says, "Oh, Bigfoot doesn't exist," you're not going to look for Bigfoot. It's because if you have that pre notion of the non existence of something, you're not going to look for it. Or the opposite, if you believe it exists, you're going to find it wherever you look. It's that confirmation bias. So, with the idea of like lacking of evidence, of course there is a lack of evidence because, first of all, people always get this really kind of get this idea wrong. Fossilization is a very rare occurrence.
Mhm.
I tell them this, okay, think of how many animals you see in the woods. Imagine that before like 10 to 20 million years, and all those animals have died, have bones, and all that. For 20 million years, that's like fairly recent. But yet we don't find fossils everywhere. They're like, yeah, that why? Because fossilization is a very rare occurrence. For instance, the best fossil finds for Cenozoic animals here in North America is the La Brea tar pits and Friesenhahn Cave actually in San Antonio, Texas, because those were predator traps. Those are literally places that are perfect for fossilization. Other places like out in the Sahara Desert, we know there's stuff out there that lived out there. Are we going to find the fossils of it? Probably not, because fossilization probably didn't occur. So especially like places where Bigfoot lived, for instance, areas of Pacific Northwest, the soil itself is actually very acidic, which causes a lack of fossilization. Places like the Florida Everglades, the things in the swamps in the South. If you want to find a fossil there, you better go and try to win the lottery first because you're more likely to win that than find a fossil. So it's like, if you look at it, of course, there's no really physical evidence of these creatures as body wise because it's just uncommon to occur in the first place.
Absolutely. Is there? You brought up the La Brea tar pits, and I'm pretty familiar with that location. I've actually been out there and stuff. But is there another place in the world that has a similar tar pits like that? Do you know of?
As for Cenozoic life, no, because that's the thing with the Liberated tar pits is that the fossils found there are not really fossils; they're actually the actual bone. If you go to like dinosaurs, things like that, that's a fossil.
Mhm.
That's not a bone; that's a mineral. I always tell people that. But when you find those bones from the Liberated tar pits, like for instance, actually this, I actually have a cast of a Smilodon discovered in the Liberated tar pits. This is an actual bone, not a fossil. So when you discover these, it's very uncommon, but for liberated tar pits, I think they found over 100 Smilodon there, over I think 500 dire wolves because it is a predator trap. Another area well known for that is also two in Texas, the Waco Mammoth Memorial, because it was one herd of Columbian mammoths that were all killed at once by most likely a rock slide or a flood. And here in San Antonio, we have the Friesenhahn Cave, a large, what we call not Smilodon, but a Homotherium. Homotherini was a group of Smilodon like Mackay rodent cats, but they were more gracile. They were more built for like large open land, while Smilodon lived mostly in forests. We found over 20 individuals because this is a den where they lived, and they all died at once. So you have places like that which are traps, but overall for like the La Brea tar pits, that's the only one known for Cenozoic life, which means like after dinosaurs.
Awesome. Yeah, it was really cool. I did not get to go to the museum when I was out there, but it was definitely a cool experience. I remember watching a TV show. I don't know if you ever seen it called Mighty Max. it was this kid with a baseball cap, and he could open portals and travel around the world. And his mother was an archaeologist, and there was an episode where he went to the La Brea tar pits, and it was my favorite episode. And so
I know, and I think a couple of years ago there was like a CBS series or something like that was like called La Brea, and it's about like people that fell in, and there's like time travel. I'm like, I know those animals. Like I know that because I have several replica fossil casts that are from the La Brea tar pits themselves. Like for instance, that Smilodon I just showed you, it has brown because the tar seeps into the bone and causes the fossils to become brown because of the tar.
That's really cool. All right, man. We are at the halfway point here. We have to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back.
Show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our shows, knowledgeable hosts, and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
Awesome, and I want to thank all of our Super Chats members here on the Untold Radio Network. We cannot do these shows without your support, so thank you very much for all you guys out there. Just a reminder, today's episode is pre-recorded. Our guest here has a day job, as a lot of us do, and so any of your questions or comments, we're not ignoring them. We're just not live at this time, even though you're watching us live, so that would be why. But today we are chatting with Ryan Edwards, the author of the brand new book, Sasquatch, A Prehistory of a Living Legend. And we are absolute fascinating conversation here. I'm just blown away. I'm more speechless at this point. This is great. I mean, like, I love all this stuff. Like, I love the dinosaurs and all that stuff, and this is really cool. You bring up a really good point, though, too. You know, like, a lot of the times people say that there's really no such thing as cryptozoology. Cryptozoology is this fancy name that we've put on the thing that we do that researches these mythical, legendary creatures, when really all we're doing is zoology. We're going out and trying to discover new creatures and new science and stuff. And I think that's always important to point out that, you know, if you go back, you know, to even the 1920s, 1930s, what cryptozoology is literally just zoology. And people forget that. So,
like, I always tell people, like, a lot of time, cryptozoology is the first step of zoology. We are the first step of discovery. Like, I always give people this question. Okay, Bigfoot's discovered tomorrow. Who starts researching? Do the primatologists and zoologists take over and the cryptozoologists get kicked out? Or do the cryptozoologists like, I'm right, I'm going to keep researching? And it's like, okay, so, like, for instance, the father of cryptozoology himself, Bernard Heuvelmans, he brings up, like, he's like, no, these creatures are most likely real. What can we do to prove these species through scientific data? And, like, even, like, Bernard Heuvelmans himself, if you read his first book, On the Track of Unknown Animals, he has more question marks in there than periods, because he wants to put forward questions. Because with cryptozoology, it truly is a science. And I think that's something that's been lost over the years, that's become more fantastical. Like, I had, how many times someone told me, it's like, oh, you're a monster hunter. I'm like, no, that's Van Helsing. That's Indiana Jones. I'm no Van Helsing. I'm a scientist. I'm not a scientist, but this is science. This is based on data, based on proven results, based on hypotheses, theories, things that you can test. Yes, like, for instance, a lot of times people call these animals monsters. Yes, they are monstrous, but they're not monsters, because the second you call something a monster, it becomes so fantastical, the science gets lost. And I say the only way we can really discover these creatures is through the science and the data, the proven results that have discovered species in the past. Like, for instance, the idea of, like, a timeline of discovery, I like to talk about. Like the mountain gorilla. It took several, from the natives talking about it to us having a specimen in Britain, was about 100 to like 150 years. So, okay, let's apply that to Sasquatch. How long has, like, Western man been seriously researching Sasquatch? What, the 30s, maybe? The 50s? How long has that been? About 80 years.
Mhm.
So if we look at it, if we look at discovery of other species, we're not at the step of discovery yet. We're still in the midst of like, we really don't know what this is. We're still kind of like getting our feet wet. We're still like, okay, there's this theory, there's this theory, there's this hypothesis. I'm just adding one hypothesis to the soup of hypotheses of what Sasquatch is. You have the people that think it's a ape, you have people that think it's a human, you have people that think it's a ghost, you have people that think it's an alien. There's all these different hypotheses, but we're all trying to get to the same goal. So, like with this, it's that kind of collaboration within the community as well. That talking about like, okay, even though there's different perspectives on Bigfoot and Sasquatch, what can we get to at the bottom of it? Because there's been plenty of times where people have talked like, "Oh, you're an aper? They're a dying breed." I'm like, "Yeah, we might be, but still, that's a science that's been proven in the past." I'm not saying I'm right. Everything in this book, I tell people, it's speculation and hypothesis. Cryptozoology is a science of speculation. We can only guess at what these creatures are, but you have to answer that question. You have to ask that question to get the answers in the first place. You have to wonder what's happening in order to get to that science. There's no way you can discover what's over that hill without climbing that hill. There's no way to discover what's in those woods without going into those woods themselves and asking yourself what's in there. And I think that's the job of a cryptozoologist and cryptozoology in general. Asking those questions and trying to get them. If we don't answer them, we don't answer them. But we need to ask the question in the first place.
Absolutely. And science is always evolving. I mean, you look at the history of science and scientific discoveries, there's so much stuff that just in my lifetime alone has been proven wrong or different, or, you know, that is science. Now, when you're looking at some of these fossils and stuff, a lot of these discoveries that we were talking about of the ancient man and that stuff, a lot of those discoveries have been discovered in museum collections already.
Yes.
That it was misidentified or mislabeled or thrown in a shoebox and buried in the basement of the museum for years until
Yeah.
somebody was doing an inventory or dusting and came across them. So do you think that it's possible that we already have bones of a Sasquatch or one of these creatures in a museum?
I think it's possible. Like, for instance, I put forward multiple hypotheses on the origins of Sasquatch, and some people have correlated it with a known species of ape called Paranthropus. Paranthropus is a human offshoot. It's not a human ancestor, but it became human like. Paranthropus is like a more robust Australopithecine. And some people think that's what my Sasquatch might be. So let's just say we prove that Sasquatch is a paranthropine. That means we already have Sasquatch evidence already existing,
Mhm.
but we have the origins of it. And it's like, for instance, I know earlier this year and last year, the whole dilemma with Tyrannosaurus rex. People were saying there's two species. There's Tyrannosaurus rex, Tyrant lizard king, and the Tyrant lizard queen, because there's one or two morphological differences that might indicate a separation of species. That's what makes especially paleontology so hard, because all it takes is one or two small morphological differences, and then that's a whole new species right there. Like, for instance, like Homo denisova. That's a whole new human species discovered by one finger bone. Or Homo floresiensis of Flores. That were the real life hobbits. Those creatures were discovered, and it put paleoanthropology on its head. A couple years back, Homo naledi, the very human-like, but it's very archaic human species that lived alongside human. They had morphological features of tree climbers when all other human species were bipedal. They also had possible ritual like burials. They would put their dead in a cave, but yet they had morphology that was more similar to apes, but behavior sets more similar to humans. So a discovery like that puts paleoanthropology on its head. That's why some people don't do paleoanthropology and like human evolution, because like they're like, all it takes is one discovery, and everything you learned is wrong.
Mhm.
So, and like it's like the same way with Sasquatch. Like with these, they always say, well, it's going to be a life changer. It's going to change the textbook. It's going to change history. No, it's not. Bigfoot actually fits very well into our natural history and very well into our natural science. It's not rewriting the book, it's adding a page. That's all you're doing. It's like if you look at like I speculate on the ecology of Bigfoot. Like most likely Sasquatch is a large omnivore. It's not the giant predator like people think. It's not out there fighting grizzly bears. It's most likely a very passive omnivore that's highly adaptable. So let's look at the ecology of North America. Can that fit? Very much it does. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, he references black bears being what we call an indicator species. If a black bear and grizzly bear can live in the area, most likely Sasquatch can also live in the area. Doesn't necessarily mean they correlate, because remember, science, correlation does not mean causation. Just because two things correlate doesn't mean they're causing one another. When you're 5 years old and you clapped your hands and there was a clap of thunder, you didn't cause a clap of thunder, they just correlated to each other. They're not causing one another. So with science, you kind of have to remember not to correlate two things just because they're like, oh, just because they're similar, they have to cause one another. That's not how science works. That's not especially how paleontology works. So cryptozoology, we have to remember that. Like the ideas of like convergent evolution. How like I always give this especially to students. When you see a hyena, what is the animal you most likely think they are? Most most people say a dog. Like, oh, I thought it was a dog. It's like, no, they're more closely related to ferrets. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, they are. They're not even canidae. They're part of the Felidae. They're more closely related to cats than canines. That is what we call convergent evolution. They have a very similar niche to canines, so they became morphologically similar to canines. Why can't the same thing happen to Sasquatch? They had a niche very similar to our human ancestors, so they became very similar morphologically to our human ancestors. Me personally, I do not believe Sasquatch is a human species. I don't think they're Neanderthals. I don't think they're anything like that, just because of morphology and behavior. Because one big thing with that hypothesis is that every human species, as long as there's been the genus Homo, there's also a convergent, there is also correlating fossil record of tools. Whether it's the Odoan tools found in Paranthropus and Australopithecines, whether it's spears, bows and arrows, whatever, fire. We don't see that with Sasquatch. So why would a human species totally lose the ability to use tools? Also, one thing I go very deeply into in the book is the hand morphology. If we look at handprints of Sasquatch, which there's only a few, the hand morphology indicates a more simian, more primate-like hand, not human. For instance, the muscles here on the thumb, those radial muscles, are very indistinct. So the thumb can only go that far, most likely, causing this animal to not have precision grip. Without precision grip, you can't grab things as well as flexible human hands. So that's not a human hand. That's a simian hand. It's almost like a giant gorilla hand or like a gorilla and chimp hand put together. So we look at the foot morphology, very human-like. Hand morphology, very ape-like. That is a good example of possible convergent evolution. These animals became human-like, but yet are not human. And that's why I try to like put forward that this most likely is an ape. If tomorrow we discover Sasquatch and we take DNA and oh, it's a human species, I'll eat crow all day if I need to. Like we don't know what these animals are. I bring up always Schrodinger's cat. We don't know what these animals are, so they have a little bit of everything. I just put forward one hypothesis because that's what I personally believe in, and that's what I think the science indicates. Because this isn't about belief, this is about science.
Very cool. Now you're down in Texas right now. You said you've grown up in there your whole life and stuff. Have you gotten a chance to go out on expeditions looking for these creatures?
A few. I've gone on a couple, but due to my day job, I'm actually a full-time teacher. I really don't have the time to really go out as much. Summers I do, but it's Texas. You do not go camping in the summers unless you want to lose a couple gallons worth of sweat. And I'm good on that. But I try to go out into field research as much. But primarily, what I do is a lot of like getting eyewitness testimony, looking at like old newspaper reports, looking at possible like sightings. Because especially recently in cryptozoology, I've noticed a divergence of the research and more storytelling. People like to tell stories about like, oh, I saw Sasquatch, oh, I saw Dogman, oh, I saw this, oh, I saw this. But what does that mean? Like, I'm yeah, you have this one research. You might have 20 Dogman sightings or 20 Bigfoot sightings. Put them on a map. See where they correlate. Look for patterns, and that's what I try to do right now. Is like look for those patterns. Are they on a certain area seasonally? Are they in certain areas? Are they eating certain things? Are they maybe is there one or two individuals being seen like, oh, people are seeing consistently a large male Sasquatch with black fur. Okay, that's probably the same individual.
Mhm.
I try to go for more like the meat and potatoes of it, of like cryptozoology. Well, I think the storytelling is more of the dessert. That's what really grabs people's attention, but it's not really the research. I try to go after the more like in-depth research of these species.
Awesome. Very good. Well, you brought it up, so I'm going to ask you in, relation to the other stuff that we've talked about, the history and the fossil record and stuff. What are your thoughts on the Dogman?
Well, because I'm very much based in biology,
Mhm.
Dogman species as a biological species is very improbable. Like I've done with Dogman research, I've done uh, Guggery research, Goatman, all these other creatures that are very likely because there's no biological precedent for a bipedal canine.
Mhm.
Their leg structure is totally wrong for bipedalism. A canine hawk is not built to consist of like they I witnessed like, oh, this thing was 500 pounds, 600 pounds. But if you look at the canine limbs, they wouldn't be able to consist that. And one other thing too, people when they see dogmen, they see large, wide shoulders. Canines don't have shoulders. Their limbs are put forward like almost like this, like a kangaroo almost. But people are referencing something that biologically cannot exist. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Of course not. But biologically, that's not a species that evolved here on Earth. That is not a biological species that evolved. That's something else. What that something else is, I don't know. That's not exactly my wheelhouse. That's why people are like, oh, what do you think dogman is? I don't know what dogman is because that's not what I research. I research the more biological plausibility of species, not the possibility. Because science is about plausibility, not just possibility. Yeah, is it possible that Bigfoot's a ghost that lives in the woods? It's possible. Is it plausible? No, the evidence does not suggest that. And for me, it's about the evidence. It's about a good friend of mine, Chris Jordan. He does the Curious Realm podcast. He says, hey, if Bigfoot's come through portals, that's terrible. You know why? Then we have to prove Bigfoot exists and the portal exists. Like
Yep.
you can't solve one mystery with another mystery. Like UFOs and Bigfoot. Yeah, they're both two unknown phenomena, but you can't correlate them just because of unknown phenomena. It's like talking to a politician. You ask a politician a question, they give you back a question. You can't answer one mystery with another mystery. You go down a rabbit hole that you would never come back out of.
Hmm. Absolutely. Now you have your first book out is Cryptids of the World, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you've done a lot of research on other creatures from around the world and stuff. Is there any other of these creatures out there that you have a firm belief do exist?
I do. One that's most likely to exist is orang pendek. Orang pendek seen in Sumatra, very much a Bigfoot-like species, about 4 to 5 feet tall, red to black fur, but the footprints are very different from Bigfoot. Because if you look at the footprint cast made of orang pendek, it's very human-like, but with a divergent big thumb, like a thumb coming out to the side. And I'm in the same camp as Ivan T. Sanderson. I believe these animals are bipedal orangutans. A species of orangutan that mainly due to ecological niche pressures became bipedal. A lot of people put forward that maybe they're surviving Homo floresiensis, but what we now know of Homo floresiensis, Flores man, it had a human-like foot, not a divergent big toe. So if you look at the footprint cast of a ring pendek, it suggests a more simian, a more ape-like structure than a human-like structure. And there's also several unknown species seen here in North America that I believe are most likely to exist. For instance, napes. Back in the 60s and the 70s, Lauren Coleman and Mark A. Hall put forward that there's a new other species of unknown ape seen in North America other than Bigfoot, called a North American ape. in Destor, Illinois, they found a like big footprint, but with a divergent big toe. I believe those are a possible offshoot of Sasquatch, but from an earlier lineage. Like, let's just say my hypothesis, Drypithecus or Drypithecine of some sort, entered North America about 20 million years ago and evolved became Bigfoot. Well, if there's a species of them that didn't evolve, they found a niche, they got comfortable, and they didn't really evolve anywhere. But what if they, at some point, convergently evolved with Bigfoot, but became more arboreal and have that divergent big thumb to help them climb? So, that's at least my theory on that is that most likely these North American apes are a offshoot of Sasquatch, but from a very much earlier lineage of this species.
Interesting. I had not heard about that. The other North American apes in America. When you're talking about the orangutan deck, I mean, you got to think that orangutans. I mean, everybody should be pretty much familiar with them, and they're endangered species. There's a very small population, a very small number of these creatures left alive in the wild, and yet they're out there still alive, still breeding, still thriving. So it's and they're very elusive as well. So it's very possible that you could have another species similar to them out there in the same area, just as elusive, maybe obviously a smaller population that we're just not finding, you know? I think you froze. I think he froze here. Just for a second, just making sure.
Cool. Yeah, I know. I know. So because I noticed you're getting choppier, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm noticing that. But get back on that with orangutans. Like,
Mhm.
for instance, like a lot of these large primates, it took us a while to discover them.
Mhm.
And it's like, for instance, I bring up the billy ape, which is a large chimpanzee seen in Kenya, which it took us years to discover that species. Even though it's just a subspecies of chimpanzee, it took us a while to discover them, and they are large, 6 foot tall chimpanzees. And even, for instance, there's a cryptid seen in the same area called the Kulakamba. It's supposedly a mix of gorilla and chimpanzee, but yet we have the same species known as the billy ape that's a known species. So there's correlation of known species and cryptids. And it's very likely that these primates, especially unknown primates, are out there because of their high intelligence. Like we know that primates are intelligent. They are an easy way to hide away from humans. Because, for instance, I bring up trail cameras in my book. A trail camera study taking place in a chimpanzee reserve in Africa noticed that they noticed what they call novel stimuli, like trail cameras. They noticed them and would purposely avoid them. When they're in big groups, they wouldn't avoid them because they feel more empowered. They feel like, okay, I can deal with whatever that is, I can deal with it. But if there's one or two individuals, they would purposefully go around them. So it's like, okay, a known species of primate does that. Why would an unknown species of primate not do that? So we find those correlations. Like with me, people always ask me, what is the best evidence for Bigfoot or Sasquatch? I don't say footprints. I don't say the Passing Gimlin film. I don't say all the eyewitness sightings. I say all the correlations between this unknown species and true biological precedent. For instance, Bergman's law states all animals in higher latitudes are larger than ones in lower latitudes. We literally see that correlation with Sasquatch footprints. The ones seen up in Alaska are usually 9 to 10 feet tall in some sightings state. The ones down here in Texas and Louisiana and Alabama, 6 to 8 feet tall. We see that. We see how they have muscularity that's very similar to primates. For instance, the late and great Dr. Grover Krantz, his research into Sasquatch foot morphology. If you look at it, it makes perfect sense for a large bipedal heavy primate. Their ankles are placed differently. They help with the leverage. They have longer metatarsal, living metatarsal bones to help with that leverage. Their toes are a little bit different than ours, and all that perfectly makes sense for what is seen. We have correlations with things that people should not be able to correlate, but it
Mhm.
does. That just proves more that this is a true, living, breathing biological species.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, looking back at stuff, you talked about Krantz and some of the four horsemen of Bigfooting and stuff. They talked about things in their books that that science didn't know at the time. Like the mid-tarsal
Yeah,
break and some like the foot
yeah,
morphology and stuff. So they're describing these things when researching these creatures way before science even discovered that this was an actual thing. And it makes sense, like you said, that if this isn't a real species, if this is just a bunch of people hoaxing footprints or something, there's so much more to it that it can't be that.
yeah. Like for instance, Native American stories and eyewitness testimony go back hundreds of years talking about Bigfoot throwing rocks, throwing sticks. But that wasn't observed in known primates until Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall. So for hundreds of years in North America, a primate behavior was being seen, and then it was but for hundreds of years in America, we were getting the same exact. There is a large North American primate. Like I believe this is a true North American primate that didn't evolve here initially, but moved here.
Mhm.
And I tell people this: if you don't think monsters existed, look at the skull of a short-faced bear. Look at the skull of a smilodon. Like all human ancestors had to deal with those things. If you look at the ecology of prehistoric North America, Bigfoot works perfectly. Like it was kind of also another thing with this book is remember as a kid any like prehistoric book you might have like a landscape with all these like little like mammoths smilodon and you have like little names to them and all that. Like I imagine something like that. Put Bigfoot in there. It fits perfectly. It doesn't seem out of place. That's why I had my friend Jason McLean. He made a artwork in the book that shows that. And you're like that that giant bipedal monkey does not seem out of place amongst mammoths.
Mhm.
Oh, oh, this might make sense now because this Occam's razor. If we look at Sasquatch as a biological species, it has to come from somewhere. And where it came from is prehistory. And what can we speculate from there? And what can we speculate to the modern age? Because at the end of my book, I end out with this. We have to think about conservation as well with these species because if we don't, they're going to go extinct. Well, they're most likely already very endangered. So
Mhm.
if we don't do conservation, if we don't discover the species, just going to be like mastodons and saber-toothed cats and short-faced bears. They're going to be extinct, and they're going to be extinct without us ever even discovering them. And I can imagine 100 years in the future, no one's had a Bigfoot sighting for like 10 or 20 years. I guess it was a myth. Then someone discovers a
Mhm.
Bigfoot skull, and they're like, "Oh, they were real. They did exist." And how would we feel as a species that most likely our most uh, common living human relative died out and went extinct without us ever knowing about it?
Yep. That is a terrible thought to think about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, we are at the end of our hour here. I thank you so much. It has been an absolute fascinating discussion about all these creatures and the evolution, and you are a wealth of knowledge, sir. Amazing guest. Your new book, Sasquatch, A Prehistory of the Living Legend, is available now on Amazon, and your other book is Cryptids of the World, correct?
Yes, that's also available on Amazon and anywhere else. Barnes and Noble, Half Price Books, anywhere where books have sold, you'll probably find that copy as well.
Awesome. And the link to get Sasquatch Prehistory on Amazon is going to be in the show notes of this episode for anybody interested. And one more time before we go, tell people how they can reach you. And you have an event coming up as well. Go ahead and tell people about that.
Of course, April 27th and 28th up in Falk, Arkansas, there's a Falk Monster Festival. I will be a speaker there along with Lyle Blackburn, Tex Wesson, and other speakers as well. We will be talking about, of course, the Falk Monster legend, the Southern Fried Bigfoot, creature seen here in the South. I will be discussing that and also discussing my possibly new book that's coming out after this one I'm concurrently working on right now. So I will be talking there. If you ever want to reach out to me, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. If you look up Ryan Edwards on Facebook, hopefully I'm one of the first people there. Just look for this ugly mug. You'll probably find me somewhere. If you look on Instagram, if you look up R. Edwards, you will find me. I will also have the same profile picture. Yes, I use the same profile picture. Please don't judge. It's called branding, people. And if you look on my web, I do not have a website, but I did have an old podcast called the Cryptid Chronicles on YouTube. You can find me there. I talk about things like this all the time, but that was a couple years back. Sorry. People get busy. Also, I do have an email called it's ryanedwards.crypto@gmail.com. You can always email me there. You also have my contact information on my social medias. Always reach out to me. I'm always open for discussion. As long as it's a smart discussion, you're not just yelling at me. I'm okay with that.
Very good. You are definitely an intellectual and definitely a wealth of knowledge, sir. It's been a pleasure talking with you and hearing all about your new book and all your research.
Of course. Thank you, my man.
All right, man. I will talk to you later, and I will definitely have you back on when your next book comes out as well.
Of course. It was a pleasure to be on.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, man. I will talk to you later.
Later.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. Coming up later this week is the debut of my brand new show here on the Untold Radio Network. Make sure that you don't miss it. It'll be this Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Time. That's right. This Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Time, the brand new Paranormal Spectrum on the Untold Radio Network debuts. We are going to be discussing all about UFOs, UAPs, and the alien phenomenon and get you up to speed on all things that have been happening here in the United States with the government and declassification and the hearings and all of that stuff. So that's coming up here on Thursday. Look forward to seeing you guys all there. And until next time, guys, I'll see you on the edge.